Imagine a laboratory mouse. Right. It's just sitting peacefully in a plastic cage. It's grooming itself, maybe sniffing at a wood shaving, just doing mouse things. And then suddenly, scientists flip this microscopic switch,
Right.
and it sends a tiny electrical current into a cluster of neurons. I mean, no bigger than a pinhead deep inside the animal's brain. And instantly, the mouse just goes into the state of sheer murderous rage.
It's completely wild.
Yeah, it isn't just annoyed, it is violently aggressive, like actively looking for something to destroy. And so, what if I told you that exact same switch, the precise neural circuitry for that intense, explosive aggression is sitting inside your head right now?
I mean, it's a really sobering thought, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we all like to think of ourselves as these highly rational captains navigating our own ships. Like we're entirely in control of our daily decisions.
Totally. So welcome to today's deep dive. If you are that intensely curious learner who wants to understand the hidden forces that are actually steering your life, you are in exactly the right place today.
You really are.
Our mission today is unpacking this incredibly dense, fascinating conversation between neuroscientist Andrew Huberman and psychologist Jordan Peterson. We are going to bridge the gap between your brain's raw biological neural circuitry and the grand mythological stories that human beings have used for thousands of years to, well, navigate life.
Yeah, and it is just a remarkable synthesis.
Yeah.
I mean, we are taking the hardest of hard sciences,
Yeah.
literally the cellular firing of neurons, and connecting it directly to ancient biblical narratives and deep psychological archetypes.
It's so cool. And look, if you've ever struggled with aligning your daily habits with your long-term goals, or if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by modern distractions like your phone and wondered why you can't just put the thing down, this deep dive is going to give you a completely new framework for understanding your own mind.
Absolutely. But to understand how you make life choices, we really first have to start at the foundational level of the brain. We have to figure out where your desires actually come from.
Right, the basement of the brain.
Exactly. And to do that, we have to dismantle the traditional view of the brain first. Because for a long time, the standard scientific model painted this picture of an autonomic system. So like a baseline system managing your heart rate, breathing, temperature.
Automatic stuff.
Right, paired with a highly evolved prefrontal cortex. And that prefrontal cortex, the area right behind your forehead, is viewed as the executive. Its primary job, supposedly, is just to suppress primitive impulses that bubble up from a tiny, ancient brain region called the hypothalamus.
Impulses like rage, hunger, sex drive, that kind of thing.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Because the traditional view basically treats the brain like a car, right?
Yeah.
Where hunger or rage is just a flashing low gas light on the dashboard. It's just a mechanical robotic signal.
That's the old way of thinking, yeah.
And the prefrontal cortex is the human driver looking at the dash, deciding whether or not to pull over. But the source material for today suggests something far, far more complex than that.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that we shouldn't view these base drives as robotic impulses at all, not even a little bit. Instead, we need to think of them as narrow, one-dimensional subpersonalities.
Subpersonalities.
Yes. They aren't just flashing lights. They have their own perceptions, their own internal logic, their own rationalizations, and this is key, their own ultimate goals.
Okay, wait, subpersonalities. That completely changes the picture. It's not a dashboard at all. It's more like a boardroom full of competing toddlers, and they're all trying to grab the steering wheel at the exact same time.
That is a perfect analogy, and the neurobiology actually backs this up brilliantly. Consider the decerebrate cat.
Oh, right, the cat.
Yeah, so this is a classic neurological condition where a cat has had roughly 95% of its higher brain removed. So what's left is mostly just the hypothalamus and the brainstem. Now, you would naturally assume an animal with almost no cortex would just be a passive, unmoving lump.
Well, yeah, I mean, without an executive, the car shouldn't drive, right?
Exactly, but it does. In a controlled environment, a decerebrate cat can still do cat things.
Yeah.
It walks around, it grooms itself, and really surprisingly, it actually remains hyper-exploratory.
Wow.
It proves that the hypothalamus isn't just some dumb switchboard sending up a hunger signal. It's actually sophisticated enough to run complex, multi-step subroutines of personality and perception completely on its own.
Which totally brings us back to that incredible Caltech mouse experiment I mentioned earlier,
Ugh.
where researchers stimulated that tiny cluster of neurons, the ventromedial hypothalamus, I think.
The one.
Right. And instantly, the mouse is flooded with rage. But here's the crucial detail from that study. The mouse only acts on that rage if there is a context.
Yes, the context is everything.
Like if it's alone in an empty cage, it doesn't just bite the air or attack the plastic walls, it just paces. But if the researchers drop an inflated glove into the cage, the mouse suddenly perceives that glove as a mortal enemy and attacks it viciously.
Which proves the drive isn't just a blind, deterministic reflex. The stimulated neurons literally change how the mouse perceives its environment. It takes a harmless piece of latex and turns it into a defeatable enemy.
It's basically a highly motivated state acting like a miniature personality, actively searching for a target.
Exactly.
So if we all have that mouse's exact rage circuit built into our own hypothalamus, how on earth are we able to sit politely in a crowded coffee shop without attacking people when they, take the last pastry?
Right, it's a good question.
How does our higher brain manage these subpersonalities if we can't just delete them?
Well, that tension brings up a major historical debate between two giants of psychology, Sigmund Freud and Jean Piaget. So Freud, who was actually originally trained as a neurologist, he largely viewed the higher brain's role as inhibition.
Like just shutting things down.
Yeah, exactly. In his model, the superego just says no to these base drives. You feel rage, and your cortex forcefully locks that rage in a mental trunk so you can exist in polite society.
But just locking a subpersonality in a trunk doesn't make it go away. It's just going to bang on the lid. Piaget had a different take, didn't he?
A very different and arguably much more accurate take. Piaget argued that a properly socialized person doesn't just inhibit their lower impulses, they integrate them.
Integrate them.
Yeah, integration is the hallmark of sophisticated socialization. It basically means taking that aggressive subpersonality, acknowledging its power, and giving it a proper, sustainable place within a larger voluntary structure.
Peterson uses a deeply personal anecdote about this in the source material regarding his own son, actually. As a toddler, his son was highly willful, leaning a bit toward natural aggression.
Which is pretty common for kids.
Yeah. Now, a purely Freudian approach might have been to just crush that aggression, to inhibit it purely through punishment and strict discipline, but instead the goal was to integrate it. And as a result, his son grew up to be a highly successful athlete.
He channeled it.
Exactly. He didn't start being assertive or aggressive. He just learned to subordinate that aggressive subpersonality to a higher order goal. He learned to use it to win a game within the strict rules of a team.
Right, and so it stretches that raw subpersonality across a broader span of time and social context.
Yeah.
We even see this play out in history, too. Think about the Viking berserkers.
Oh man, the berserkers.
Yeah, they didn't inhibit their biological rage circuits when they went into battle. Instead, they use a specific mushroom Amanita muscaria.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it contains a muscarinic compound that literally short-circuits the brain's fear and pain receptors while radically altering perception. So they systematically integrated their predatory rage, narrowing its context exclusively to the battlefield so they could fight with devastating focus.
That is wild.
It is an extreme, chemically induced example for sure, but it shows the prefrontal cortex providing a context-dependent strategy for a base drive.
So the prefrontal cortex isn't just a parent yelling stop. It's more like a manager. It's saying, not now, but later, and in this specific way.
Yeah.
And the failure to manage that context is essentially what defines psychopathy.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, psychopathy is essentially the extension of a 2-year-old's immaturity into physical adulthood.
How so?
Well, think about a toddler. They're entirely bound to the present moment, completely ruled by the immediate dominion of whatever subpersonality happens to be active, whether it's hunger, exhaustion, or a desire for a shiny toy. A psychopath operates the exact same way.
I see.
They lack the cortical integration required to delay gratification. Because they can't integrate their drives into a larger, socially sustainable goal, they will gladly betray their own future selves just for an immediate thrill.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? Because I kind of want to push back on this a little bit, specifically regarding how our brain rewards us. Isn't dopamine just the brain's way of rewarding us for feeling good? Like, if we are getting a dopamine hit, aren't we satisfied? Why does it actually matter if we get that reward from looking at a glowing screen or eating a highly processed snack rather than, say, climbing a mountain or building a relationship?
That is the perfect question. And it really cuts to the core of where modern society just wildly clashes with our ancient biology.
Mm.
Because dopamine is widely misunderstood in pop culture. People always call it the pleasure chemical.
Right, the happiness hormone or whatever.
Yeah, but Huberman is really explicit about this. Dopamine is actually dumb.
Dumb.
Yes, it has no inherent intelligence. It is simply a currency of motivation. When you move toward a goal, dopamine rises in your system. And as it rises, it radically alters your physiology. Your pupils actually physically dilate. Your visual field physically narrows toward your target, literally blocking out peripheral distractions.
So it's a physiological targeting system, but because it's dumb, it can be tricked.
Exactly. It can be hijacked by what evolutionary biologists call superstimuli.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, take the classic example of the stickleback fish.
Mm.
So, male sticklebacks are highly territorial and aggressive toward other males, which they identify by a specific red dot on their belly. Now, researchers found that if they introduce an artificial, oversized, glowing red dot into the water,
Something that looks nothing like a real fish.
right, the stickleback will attack it far more aggressively than a real rival. The maximal biological activation is produced by a stimulus that doesn't even exist in nature.
And humans are currently just swimming in a massive digital sea of oversized red dots.
We absolutely are. Modern human superstimuli. So we're talking internet, pornography, cocaine, highly processed foods. They function exactly like that artificial red dot.
Let's talk about the food aspect, because I think everyone can relate to that.
Sure. Let's look at highly processed food. When you eat a whole food, like a steak or an apple, there are multiple complex pathways to satiation. Yes, your mouth tastes it, and you get a dopamine hit.
Obviously, steak tastes good.
Right. But your gut also has specific neurons designed to sense essential amino acids and fatty acids. It sends a signal up the vagus nerve to your brain confirming, yes, we are actually getting real nutrients. That creates true biological satiation. The drive physically shuts off.
But when you eat a highly processed, mass-produced candy bar,
You completely bypass that gut-level nutritional sensing. The candy bar lacks the complex essential amino acids, but it triggers a massive unnatural blood sugar spike.
and so the dopamine goes crazy.
Exactly. That spike supercharges the dopaminergic system, which just screams more. Your brain loops into this endless foraging mode, chasing a nutritional ghost. You get endless dopamine craving, but because the biological nutrients aren't actually there, you never achieve actual satiation.
Wow. And the parallel between that and things like algorithmic social media feeds or pornography is terrifying, because these are super stimuli that provide massive dopaminergic rewards with zero commensurate sacrifice.
Zero friction.
Yeah, like if dopamine evolved to give us the energy to cross 10 miles of dangerous savanna to get an apple, scrolling on a phone gives us the neurochemical reward of finding the apple without taking a single step.
And that leads directly to a degenerating cycle of addiction. Because these superstimuli offer no real-world friction, no physical effort, no chance of rejection, no risk of failure. They rob us of something fundamental to our nervous system.
Which is?
Action at a distance. Our evolutionary drive for impact, for creating something distal in time and space, gets looped back onto ourselves. The engine is redlining, but the transmission is just stuck in neutral. The motivation circuitry essentially cannibalizes itself, dissolving the user in their own reflex.
Man, that phrase, action at a distance, is so powerful because we are quite literally built to hit targets out in the world. Huberman notes in the conversation that humans have a massively expanded area of the brain called the frontal eye fields.
Right, the visual tracking.
Yeah. This network regulates our gaze. We don't just look around randomly, you know. Our gaze specifies the exact center of a target. Furthermore, we constantly infer the internal intent of other people based entirely on where they are aiming their eyes.
It's true. We are deeply psychophysiologically wired for target seeking, which is precisely why lacking a clear target in life is so profoundly destabilizing for a human being. We need somewhere to aim.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Peterson points out a fascinating linguistic connection to this biology. The ancient word for sin, hamartia in Greek, and there's a similar equivalent in ancient Hebrew. It isn't originally a moral term.
No, it's not.
It literally translates to an archery term. It means to miss the target.
That is definitely not a coincidence. This is where the synthesis of the two fields really shines. Ancient mythology perfectly maps onto our neurobiology. Think back to ancient polytheistic societies. The pantheon of gods were literal, externalized representations of our warring hypothalamic subpersonalities.
Like Mars and Venus.
Exactly. Mars, the god of war, is the subpersonality of rage. Venus, the goddess of love, is the subpersonality of sexual drive.
So when an ancient person is consumed by sudden, violent rage, they didn't just say, oh, I'm having an emotional dysregulation. They believed they were literally possessed by the god of war. The subpersonality took the steering wheel.
Precisely. And the profound shift in human history was the cultural emergence of monotheism.
The one god.
Right. Psychologically speaking, monotheism represents the development of a meta-target. It is the psychological representation of a supreme, integrated goal that aligns all of those lower-order competing subpersonalities across time and society. It's the ultimate cortical integration.
The ultimate up. And Peterson uses the biblical story of Abraham to illustrate this beautifully.
It's a great example.
Yeah, Abraham starts the story at age 75 with total material abundance. He has wealth, extreme comfort, and absolutely no material needs. He has basically hit the consumerist utopia that modern society tells us we should all want. But then, the voice of the divine calls to him.
And what does that voice say? I mean, it certainly doesn't say, stay comfortable and enjoy your wealth.
Right.
God, representing this ultimate meta-target, commands Abraham to leave his father's tent, to abandon his comfort zone, and to venture out into the unknown, dangerous world. It's a call to ultimate adventure.
And the metaphysical deal he gets is amazing. If he voluntarily takes on this extreme risk and leaves his comfort, his life will become a blessing, he will achieve renown, and he will establish something of lasting value across multiple generations.
It's the opposite of a superstimulus.
Exactly. It perfectly symbolizes that true human satiation doesn't come from passive indulgence, and it certainly doesn't come from your phone. It comes from generative action over time and distance.
Which brings us to perhaps the most practical, actionable realization of this entire discussion. Responsibility and adventure are actually the exact same thing.
I really love that concept because we usually think of responsibility as this dreary, dutiful, tax-paying sort of chore that just crushes our freedom.
Right, but that's a total modern misconception. Think about it. When you watch a great action movie, why are you gripped by the hero's journey?
Because the stakes are high.
Yes, because the stakes are incredibly high. And the stakes are only high because the hero has voluntarily taken on a massive, heavy burden. They have chosen to save the city or protect the innocent at great personal risk. Responsibility is precisely what makes life an adventure. If you are sitting at home wishing your life was an adventure, you find it through the voluntary adoption of responsibility.
So how does the listener actually do this? How do you step out of the chaos of modern distraction and start aiming at this meta-target today?
The advice from the source is incredibly practical. You start small.
Very small?
You organize your physical space, you clean your room, you spend 10 minutes sorting out the junk in your garage.
It sounds almost too simple, honestly, bordering on a cliche. But neurologically, it is profound. You are taking an environment of high entropy, a space of high uncertainty and visual chaos, and you are actively imposing linear order on it.
You're mapping it. Yeah, you're literally practicing the exact cortical integration we've been talking about. Mapping your brain's order-making capacity onto the physical world.
And from there, you scale up. You find your broader path using two internal compasses, calling and conscience. Calling is what naturally draws your deep curiosity, what fascinates you, what could you study for hours without getting bored.
Right.
And conscience is looking around your specific environment and asking, what bothers me here that I actually have the power to fix?
It is the dynamic, lived tension between what beckons you forward into the unknown and the disciplinary limitations of what you inherently know is wrong. And this framework applies broadly, scaling all the way up to how we organize our society.
Which is an important macro-level point they touch on. Peterson and Huberman objectively view the current media and political landscape as a grand struggle between play and tyranny.
Yeah, play is crucial.
They observe that a healthy society requires play, which in this context just means a dynamic, responsive, open interaction between different ideas to stave off the rigid disintegration of tyranny. Now, to impart what they're saying impartially here, they stress that to maintain that play, there is an absolute necessity for a formidable, balanced political opposition.
Structural check.
Right. Without a strong, competent opposition party to check power, they argue any ruling group, regardless of their initial intentions, will naturally slide into ideological blindness and corruption. It's just a purely structural analysis of power dynamics from their perspective.
And this raises an important question regarding how we navigate that kind of societal structure as individuals. How do we ensure we are aiming at the right target and not just falling for a corrupted, comfortable narrative?
Right. How do you know you're not just fooling yourself?
The key lies in the core ethos of the scientific method. The willingness to place the discovery that you are wrong above the demonstration that you are right.
Oh, man, which is incredibly hard to do. I mean, if you've built your whole career or your whole identity on a specific theory or a political belief, admitting the data proves you wrong is terrifying. It feels like a threat to your very survival.
It really does. It is the ultimate sacrifice of the ego to the meta-target of truth. But when we fail to do that, the consequences are disastrous.
You get bad data.
Worse than bad data. We get careerist corruption, like that massive data fabrication scandal in Alzheimer's research that misdirected the entire medical field, wasting billions of dollars and 15 years of time. Or, in the absolute darkest extremes of history, when science is totally divorced from a moral meta-target, you get the absolute horrors of Unit 731 during World War II.
Oh, God.
Where horrific human atrocities were committed under the guise of objective, value-free data collection. True adventure, whether in rigorous science, intimate relationships, or personal growth, demands letting go of a predetermined, comfortable outcome and serving the truth above all else.
Okay, let's recap this journey. We started way down in the basement of the brain, looking at the raw, competing subpersonalities fighting for control in the hypothalamus.
The toddlers in the boardroom.
Exactly. We saw how our higher brain tries to integrate those drives and how modern superstimuli like junk food, pornography, and algorithmic feeds can totally hijack our dopamine system, trapping us in a revving engine with absolutely no real-world impact.
Just endless craving without satiation.
And finally, we explored the profound realization that aiming high, looking toward a meta-target, and voluntarily taking on the heavy burden of responsibility is the ultimate human adventure.
And if you are listening to this right now and feeling a sense of anxiety or aimlessness in your life, it's vital to recognize that those feelings aren't necessarily dysfunctions or chemical imbalances.
They might be a signal.
According to this framework, that discomfort might literally be your conscience. It might be the ancient call to adventure urging you to step out of your comfortable dopaminergic paralysis and find a target that is actually worth aiming your life at.
It is a completely different, empowering way to view your own mind. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over.
Oh, I'm ready.
If our base subpersonalities, our fragmented drives for rage, status, or immediate pleasure, are essentially like the ancient polytheistic gods constantly vying for control of our actions. And our modern attention economy, with its highly tuned social media algorithms, is specifically engineered to isolate and feed those individual fragmented desires.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Are our smartphones essentially digital polytheistic temples?
Yeah.
And if they are, what daily physical practices must you invent to build a monotheistic focus in an age that is quite literally designed for infinite distraction?
That is the ultimate question of our time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep your aim true.